Yo, what's good, it's your boy Dude Reviews, and in case you haven't seen the Punk Hazard arc, then heavy spoilers, you have been warned. So I just pretty much watched this arc, I've completed it, and I'm about to start Dressrosa. And honestly, guys, I'm a little bit indifferent with this arc. In terms of positive, I did like the scene of Nami standing up to Sanji, wanting to save the children. Yes, they don't know these kids, but Nami's like, no, these kids are innocent, we gotta look out for the kids. And I like how Nami is more or less being a hero in this moment, how she was once a victim and she needed help from people, and now she's the one who's helping others. Yes, she helped Robin in the past and did what she did with the other Straw Hats, but this is the first time where she actively makes a decision to do something to help someone. I also liked how one of the little girls from the group of kids who were kidnapped by Caesar Clown actually makes a brave stance. All of her friends are starting to lose their minds as the candies they eat sort of corrupt their brains, and Mokka knows about this and she's like, I'm gonna eat all this candy. And honestly, it was a little bit shocking seeing this child make such a really terrifying sacrifice. Just got me wondering, if this was in live action, would they actually kill this character off like they did with the previous characters in the other arcs in the live action show, like the Sheep Man in Usopp's village? But I'm sure they're not going to do that, as that's a little child. They're not going to kill off kids. I also like how Luffy decides to team up with Law and his pirate crew, as even though he knows that he and his teammates are strong, teaming up would be beneficial to take down the Emperors, as well as it being a fun experience for Luffy. But I do like how Robin warns Luffy that you gotta be careful of traitors. And with this being a rewatch, it's so interesting that that line actually comes back to haunt some of the characters. I think Zoro had probably one of the best moments in all of One Piece so far, where he basically screams at Luffy, telling him to pull himself together after his loss against Caesar Clown. They're in the new world, they have to be serious. And I think Zoro's little speech sort of ricocheted throughout the entire crewmates as well. The Straw Hats had a lot of really nice little moments where Luffy waits for the rest of the crew to all show up, like Tony and Usopp and Brook. I know that they're all crewmates and they have to look out for one another, but watching those guys just stand and wait for their crewmates to come before the poison starts sweeping the entire building was really touching. It shows their loyalty to not only Luffy but the entire crew. The season also had some really funny gags and moments where Law swaps the hearts of each of the Straw Hats, and we have some really comedic moments, particularly with Sanji. I mean, my gosh, Oda knew what he was doing with this one. But I must admit, the joke did go on for a bit too long. I do like seeing more Smoker and Tashigi, particularly Tashigi. She had some really cool moments. I like to see where she talks to Nami and Nami is basically berating her and the Marines for not doing their jobs properly and letting these children suffer, and Tashigi is just bowing her head and wanting to make things right. It's interesting seeing a Marine basically more or less thank a pirate for doing the job that they couldn't do and show regret and remorse, and Nami acknowledges that as she reminds her of Bellamy, who used to be a Marine. Speaking of Tashigi, there's a moment where she and Monet both wonder if Zoro isn't fighting Monet seriously because she's a woman. Even when I was watching it, I couldn't help but think, is this what Zoro is doing? But no, Zoro was more or less just kind of warming up, and he was serious. If you challenge Zoro to a fight, he's going to treat you equally, and Zoro is a G. He's a real G in this arc. And speaking of Monet, she had a really interesting moment with Doflamingo towards the end when she was on death's door, and the entire scene felt really emotional, and it had a slightly haunting vibe as well, where she's dying and she's talking to Doflamingo, and for some odd reason it feels like this would have been a great moment to get some sort of flashback between her and Doflamingo or something like that, as it just sort of felt hollow. As we as the audience don't know a whole lot about Monet. She's Caesar Clown's hench lady and she does her thing and she's dying and it's sad and we just don't know too much about her. It would have been cool to have gotten an episode worth of flashbacks regarding Monet. It would have made that entire scene more impactful and emotional, but it is what it is. Step aside Freddie Highmore, because Tony Chopper is the true good doctor of this arc. I mean, my gosh, this dude has so much heart. He has a heart of gold. Chopper getting emotional over the children and being so mad and angry towards Caesar Clown. You just love seeing that passion in Chopper, and the voice actress had a lot to do in this arc. I mean, Chopper was just screaming and shouting and just going on these rants about how much of a bad person Caesar is and how these children are just so innocent and how they don't deserve to suffer the way they did. Even the moment where Laura is helping the kids out, but we as the audience don't know, and Chopper is just freaking out. He thinks that Laura is killing them, and this arc more or less reminded me on how much I like Tony Chopper a lot as a character, and absolutely genius skills in the medical field. It's truly something to not take granted for, and he really is the soul of the Straw Hats. I mean, my gosh, without this dude, how many people would be super injured or on death's door? Chopper is a true hero. I also feel like the fight between Virgo, Law, and Smoker were really well animated, and there was so much intensity and rawness from them, but at the same time, it kind of lacked a bit of heart, and I feel like that's because these three characters, we haven't seen their backstory yet. We don't know too much about these dudes, so while it's cool seeing awesome characters fight one another, when you don't know too much about them, you just sort of are left wondering, why do I care about this fight? Once again, One Piece knows how to make a pretty despicable villain character in the form of Caesar Clown. His lack of empathy towards his men and all the workers in Punk Hazard is pretty vile, and even some of the workers there are pretty upset that Caesar Clown doesn't care about their safety. And speaking about some of those subordinates under Caesar Clown, this arc did a pretty damn good job at making some of these side characters pretty damn likable. Like just the scenes of them crying and them being so devoted to Caesar Clown was more or less touching to watch, especially seeing the Marines and how they sacrificed themselves to save Tashigi. I got a bit emotional seeing that moment where Tashigi is just screaming at them as they sacrificed their lives for her. It was pretty touching and warm and sad at the same time. But honestly, that's about it. This arc was pretty chill in my opinion compared to even Fishman Islands with some of the heavy subject matter in that arc. This arc is well and truly a setup for the big Dressrosa arc, so I'm a little bit on the fence with this arc. I did like some episodes and some moments, but at the same time it was a little bit meh. I mean, it's a way better arc than Skypiea, my gosh. But to me, it felt like the most light-hearted arc throughout the entire series so far. I noticed how this arc does a bit of the opposite, where whenever the Straw Hats go to a new island, the island always looks super majestic and beautiful to look at, but the longer they spend their time on that island, they start to uncover some dark secrets about it, and it's not all it seems to be. But this island, the moment they step foot on it, it is not a nice place to be in, but when they actually dive into it, yes, there's some pretty dark things going on behind the scenes, but it's nowhere near as bad like some previous One Piece arcs. In fact, there's more comedic moments in this arc than other arcs. My gosh, those Momonosuke and Nami scenes, oh my gosh. With Kinemon and Momonosuke on board the Straw Hats for Dressrosa, I think we're gonna get a lot more of those scenes with Nami. Oh boy, but it is what it is. Overall, this arc was a little bit meh, had some cool fights, but nothing too spectacular. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 and a C+. It is what it is, but tell me, what did you think of the arc? Did you like it or not? Like for more? Boy did the view, signing out.